Welcome back, class, to White Caliber. Today we are playing Not Like Horizon, because, I don't know, I didn't feel like it. So today instead we are going to play Strike, with with an exclamation point at the end there, and a capital letter. It has to have both, otherwise you're not pronouncing it right.
Shouldn't it all be in caps?
Is it for some reason? I guess
It's
that's...
shouted.
This is bullshit.
It's not that up its
I'm
own
out.
ass. It's
Yeah,
it's got some humbleness to it.
a little bit of humbleness. It's just enthusiastic. It's not like overbearing. And that's how you pronounce it. But yes, Strike is it started as an indie game, homebrewed. That was, well, it is an indie game. It was started as a homebrewed called Sacred Barbecue, and that refers to certain terms, concepts in Dungeons and Dragons where they have sacred cows, like, stats, and always using a d20 and stuff like that. Where it's stuff that repeats throughout all editions of D&D. Strike, its aim was to barbecue those cows and make a different game entirely out of the 4th edition of D&D. So it has a lot in common with D&D 4e, but not everything. The first thing that you'll notice is that it only uses 1d6, one six-sided die. There's no d20. And more importantly, when you roll that 1d6, instead of adding something to it, like your strength mod, and then comparing it to a target number, you instead just have results assigned to what you roll. So if you look, I assume ARP has the chat window and all my spam macro stuff in there.
I do.
You'll notice that there's a little number preceding what's there. So the 3 or the 6 or the 1 or whatever, that's the side of the die, and that's the result that is attached to it. So roll a 6, you get a success with an extra bonus, and that's what happens. There you go. G. Davis got a 5, which is a success. Hooray!
Huh, but it didn't do all
Hooray,
the
D.
fancy
Davis.
stuff it did for you.
Well,
Weird.
that's just the 1d6 macro. I didn't know if you wanted to use just the 1d6 or the unskilled or skilled or whatever.
I gotcha.
There you go.
I got it now.
You got it.
I figured out buttons.
I put them all in my bar.
Hooray! Alright, so basically there is no difference of difficulty. It doesn't matter how difficult a thing is. If you lift a heavy object and try to lift a heavier object later, it's the same thing. 1d6, that's it. The one thing that divides between the two is whether you're skilled or you're unskilled. Skills in this game are player-defined. They are not like a set like athletics and perception or something like that. You might have skills, name those things, but they're all what you decide they're called. So if you try to do a task, you can try to talk the GM into believing that the skill is related to the task, and if they agree, then you can go ahead and roll skilled. If not, then you roll unskilled, which is slightly worse odds of succeeding, but there is a possibility if you roll a 6 to learn the skill that you are attempting. So it's kind of a progressive game like that. This game doesn't really like failure. If you try picking a lock and you don't succeed, it's not called a failure, it's called a twist. That means that something changes about the situation. Maybe you pick that lock. Maybe you don't actually fail at picking the lock, but something happens that is not expected. Perhaps the guards come around the corner, or maybe you pick the lock and there's someone in there, looking out for you. So yeah, that is basically Strike.
I like it,
Sounds good.
he says without having actually played it. But
Yeah.
I did back this on Kickstarter because it looked really promising to me. And I think that's one of the reasons that we got into this. I know Steve was into it as well, so
Yep.
We've both been campaigning to try it out, and now seems to be the time.
It did, and I like it too, because I wanted to try something a little more narrative, but our group is very much focused on the tactical combat, which I agree is good. I like it. This does use gridded combat. If you're familiar with D&D 4e, it does use at-will powers and counter powers. You can flank. There's all sorts of stuff that is like that, but it just kind of takes the math out of it. So it's just, I mean, there's some math in that, you know, you do 2 damage and deduct it from like 10 HP, but that's nothing. Or maybe it's too much. I don't know. Have I lost everyone? Oh god.
No, we're fine.
So basically, if you like role-playing games but you think math is for dorks, this is the game for you.
Exactly.
I do think math is for dorks, so I love
yeah.
it.
Me too.
When you're
I'm half
rolling,
offended.
Let's not. No, no, we're not going.
I almost didn't put together why, but then I did, and I don't agree. I disagree.
all right, moving
He's
on.
half dork.
Tricking us into being racist.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible.
I would never.
Speaking of
Anyway.
which, yeah, let's continue.
When
Yes.
you roll, if you have some sort of certain advantage, like let's say if you're trying to, I don't know, pick a lock, and you have really nice unlocking lock picks, you can take advantage on that. That means you roll 2d6 and you take the highest result. Similarly, if you have, I don't know, some sort of bad advantage, maybe your hand's busted or something like that, you can take disadvantage. You roll 2d6 and you take the lowest result.
You got like a club hand.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess.
Deformed at birth.
Took a weird turn.
It did.
I hope we
So-
don't trigger anybody.
Right. The bonuses aren't cumulative. If you have advantage from 3 sources, you still only roll 2d6. If you have a disadvantage and also advantage, then they cancel out. You just roll the 1 die. Like I explained, twists are basically just, you know, they're things that change the situation. Costs, if you'll notice that, well, if my players notice, some of the tables results will say that they come with a cost. A cost is usually something like a condition, like you're winded, or you're angry, or you lost confidence in yourself. They're basically bad statuses, status effects. That's the word I'm looking for. Bad statuses. That's
I
it.
love that angry is a status effect in this game.
It's like that's like a real life one too.
I hope it doesn't turn out super
Get mad
annoying,
at us, I'm angry.
like in Edge of the Empire, how you'd get successful rolls, but then take like half your health and stun damage.
No,
you
I
don't have
wouldn't do that.
stun damage.
Steve,
No,
I
we
have a
don't.
question.
Yes, sir.
I think it's very interesting that at no point does this really talk about failure and instead uses twists. Is this just wording or is it a fundamental difference in what?
It's indeed a fundamental difference because, I mean, you can fail something. Like, let's say that like lock-picking example I mentioned before. Maybe you don't pick the lock and you do fail, but the point is that you don't just leave it at that. It's not like you fail it and then just try it again. Something happens. Something always happens. Whether you succeed at it or whether you fail at it, you know, maybe you trip an alarm. Maybe there's magic. There's the twist is that something changes about the situation. Usually to your detriment. Sometimes it can be positive, but it still changes things. And it'll take a bit of time for us to get used to that, I feel. But fortunately, this game is one of those that likes collaboration. So, like, if someone rolls a twist and I just have no freaking idea what a twist might be, someone else can suggest one and we can go with it.
Oh, we can totally do that.
Indeed.
We're gonna come up with
I
the randomest
preemptively
shit.
ban Co from having a narrative influence on any of my lists.
But yes, costs come in 3 forms. There's the conditions I talked about. They're basically just bad statuses. Sometimes you'll come with a flaw. Flaw can sometimes give you a disadvantage. Like, it usually is attached to if you're acquiring an item or information, the item or information is flawed somehow, and acting on that or using the item will give you disadvantage. There is some things you can use with flaws that we'll cover later that relate to action points, which are narrative tools that allow you to do things automagically. But skipping that for a moment, the third thing that can come about with a cost is that you owe someone a favor. That's pretty self-explanatory. And of course, they expect you to repay that favor at some point, and apparently if you don't, you get a bad reputation. I'm not like have memorized this this rule book word for word just yet. So
If there's like nobody around, would we just owe a favor to the gods or something?
Friendly guard will show up.
No, I mean that's usually going to happen only on like social things, like if you're asking someone a favor, not a favor, but if you're begging or if you're trying to get information from them or something like that. So I mean, they're not all three of these things are going to trigger, and it's really dependent on what you're trying to do. Usually, like if you jump over a pit, right, and you get a twist on it, or a cost on it, I'm sorry, it's not going to be that you owe someone a favor on that. It's going to be that you get winded or something like that.
You owe that cliff a favor. You jumped right over it.
That cliff collects on its debts.
You're gonna
Everybody
pay
gets
what
one.
you owe, Cliff Yablonsky.
Well, you never know. Maybe that cliff is a stone elemental, and it like saves your ass, and then expects something in return. I don't know.
Maybe the cliff has
Hopefully
named
not your
Daniel,
ass.
and the cliff is pretty rad.
Boo!
My
Boo!
I don't.
Do it again.
Boo!
I'm sure
Alright.
you missed this, Jared.
Boo!
All right.
Fuck, I'm not the GM, so I can't ruin your life now.
Like I mentioned, skills are player defined. You will have the opportunity to define your own skills as we go through character generation. You can use skills in a couple of ways. The first is, of course, that if you have the blacksmith skill, then you can create a sword. That's pretty self-explanatory. But also, if you have the blacksmith skill, it gives you knowledge and expertise in that area. That means that you know about smithing techniques, and you know like what the make of like if you look at a sword, you can probably tell who made it. That's your thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's knowing it, and you can also apparently they don't really define this one too well. It might be in the GM section, but they say that you can declare a fact.
Yeah, that's in the GM section.
Oh, is it? Okay. I read through that once, but that was like months ago. But anyway.
It just basically says that the player can use that opportunity to invent something that becomes part of the world.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you can use your skill with locksmith to say like, this is one of the K24 locks that's popular these days. They're, resilient to picking, but can be broken through with acid drains or something. I don't know.
I like the voice you affected in that. Yeah.
That's my gentleman thief voice.
Last thing you can use skills for is to contact a character related to the skill. So if you have blacksmithing, you can totally find other blacksmiths or people who supply blacksmiths with stuff.
The secret blacksmith network. World
Yeah.
conspiracy.
Yeah, you have hammer with no E in it. It's just this app. Swipe right when you find an anvil that you like.
Nice.
Is that for blackness to hook up on the side?
I'd bang that anvil.
Your blacksmith teacher is Michael from Garay.
Check out that temper. And I mean that in
Yeah,
both
Steve knows
senses
what
of
I'm
the
talking
word.
about. You can make linked rolls.
I
These are
broke
just
those billows.
That
Boom.
weird Sylvester Stallone voice.
Yeah, that sounded like him.
Well, I tell you, I groove that fuller.
That doesn't sound like Stallone.
I don't know who that was.
It
Farrell.
wasn't.
I'm not really sure where you're going with that one.
Was that supposed to be Farrell?
Food too. Sorry.
Oh, you were going for Connery. Okay.
All right. But
Psychotic bastard religion.
you can do linked rolls. Linked rolls are things that you basically do to set up someone else's role or your own role, as the case may be. For instance, if you try to distract a guard while your friend sneaks past, that's a linked roll, and your role can give your friend advantage or even disadvantage. You can also help, for in the case that if you're just kind of adding to their effort without the possibility of a twist happening. Like the example they give is if you just help someone else lift something, you can help them by making a roll, and they make their roll, and if you roll higher than them, they add one to their their roll. So if they roll 2, then and you roll higher than them, they act as if they rolled a 3.
All right, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Aid and kind of mechanic.
Indeed. Action points. This is the thing that is probably, pretty important for the narrative flow of the game, because action points can be used to spend. You spend them, and basically you kind of just automatically succeed at things. Like I believe, is that what it is, or is that the tricks thing?
Action points, I think they have both in combat and out of combat applications.
They do, yeah.
I know
like
the combat applications are on 61, but
there are also like certain abilities, like the striker roll has a triggered action where if they get attacked, they can, as a reaction, spend an action point and attack back once per encounter.
Yeah.
You may spend an action point to add 2 to either advance or defense before your team rolls. Only 1 action point can be spent this way per team per round.
I think that's team conflict. Which is
team conflict. Sure.
That's what they tactical combat is the one that is the grid-based stuff, which is what we're doing. The other thing was complex, and I didn't know what the hell was going on. I'll read that more thoroughly later, but we're just concentrating on figuring out the stuff here. Right, tricks. Every character has a trick. Or 2, or 3.
It's not a trick, Michael.
It's an illusion.
No. You may spend an action point at any time to activate your rally. Additionally, your roll gives you additional ways to spend action points in combat called an action trigger. You may not spend action points to gain advantage on attacks in combat, although you may still spend them to gain that advantage with any skill roll you make.
Right. That's right. You spend an action point on any roll outside of combat to gain advantage. So there you go. That's what they do.
Right.
Yeah, in combat, rally is basically second wind if you played 4th edition. It's how you kind of, get HP back on your own without a healer. It's a little more cool in this system because it doesn't take an action. All it does is just take one of your action points. And also it restores one of your encounter powders. So it is the thing. You can also use it while incapacitated to just kind of get back up. So way better. Tricks. Let's see. Yeah, right. If you have a trick, the example here is that the character has the trick, I want the truth, and you can always sense lies, evasions, or partial truths. So if you had that trick, you could ask the DM, can I tell if he's telling the truth? You could, if the DM allows it, to spend an action point and just automatically know, because that's your trick. That's your thing that makes you special.
It's your one unique thing.
No one's going to get that other than us.
I'm just kidding.
Complications. This is somewhat similar to the Fate system, where they have compels. Basically, it's a drawback, like, I don't know, drug addict, where, if you willingly give yourself a twist, like you yourself declare that you failed this check, then you get an action point from it. You still fail, or you get a twist rather, but you do get an action point from it. So it's your own way of doing. You can basically kind of win on your terms with tricks, and you can fail on your own terms with complications, and that's how you kind of mostly deal with the action point economy. Speaking of economy, every session, I believe you gain at least 1 action point, and 3 of them carry over between sessions. Now, also, for every session that we play, players are allowed to give 1 action point to any other player for doing something cool. And that doesn't come from your own stock. It's just a thing that you kind of have that you can do. So if someone does something cool, entertaining, whatever, you can say, that deserves an action point, and they get 1.
Damn, D. David's gonna get all the action points.
What? I never do anything cool.
That is untrue.
You're always entertaining.
Oh, you guys.
Even when playing Diablo 2.
Oh, man. It's a fun game. I never played it before.
It is. It looks so dated, though.
Dude. I got Lords of Destruction, though, so now I can run it at 800 by 600 resolution.
Whoa!
My Might be able to hit 30 frames per second now.
That's impressive from a game from what, 2000?
Did you say 30 or
2001.
13?
Yeah, 2001.
Crazy. Sorry to derail. Let's get back to it.
No, it's fine. The only other thing to cover is resources and wealth, which they kind of have an abstracted system for that's not really any money in the system. You just kind of, if you want to buy a thing, then you have a resources rating, which is basically, they use it kind of like a skill, except for that difficulty actually does matter when you do wealth. Mostly it's just in relevance to what you have. So like it's rated from 0 to 4. 0 is, of course, broke. 1 is, I think, poor. Yeah. And so on. Yeah, 1 is poor, 2 is rich, and 3 is super rich. Okay, so it goes from 0 to 3. I had the 4 right, just not the right scale. But anyway, so we'll cover that when we do character generation. That just kind of is something that you'll have to set up for yourself. You can earn cash bundles, which can help you buy things, blah, blah, blah. I don't really want to go into it right at the second.
So then, how do we figure out exactly how much food and water we need every day when we're on the road?
Well, you're going to need to actually go buy a wineskin, measure the fluidic volume it can hold.
Now I've pulled up a
I
chart
hope you're ready
of
for hardcore
conversions
survivalism.
Daryl has disconnected.
with real-world measurements to fantasy measurements, so we can use that in
I
determining.
want the exact weight in stones.
Get fucked. I'll eat your heart.
We've also got these 5 charts for determining exposure when you're out in the wild.
Kill me.
Something anal circumference.
Oh,
Wow.
That's more Mike.
Oh,
yeah, that's true. He can't stop talking about Fatal.
Here, I think he
Yeah,
really
well.
wants to play it.
Someday Mike will find his fatal connection. But today is not that day. So let's move on with Strike!
Indeed. And thank you for pronouncing the exclamation point.
Well, every time it has to be done.
Every time. It's true. All right. So I haven't mentioned it yet, but we are going to be playing Strike in a certain setting that most people should be familiar with, called Eberron.
It's already in the
Perhaps you've
title.
heard of it.
sorry, did you say
Oh, is it?
Equestria?
It is
Yes,
now.
Get fucked.
Hardcore survivalism in
I love
Equestria.
it.
Yeah. So we
Must
have
have
to
enough
find out.
pony
So we have to
Feral
find out
has
how much a
triple
pony needs to eat and drink every day.
We also
No,
need to figure out our
ponies-
caloric intake.
Ponies subsist on friendship, love, and hugs, so that is the currency that we need to use.
That doesn't seem like. I don't know. They must eat something.
No,
Look, that's not quantifiable. You can't use
It
that.
absolutely is quantifiable.
Okay, there
There's
must
going to be.
There has to be at least one brony in the audience. So.
Yeah,
they
can tell us.
please, identify yourself. My mouse isn't floating over the ban link or anything.
I'm
So
sure
tell
they can
us.
tell us about the very stringent economy of friendship, where people like barter favors for friendship on the black market of Equestria.
Sounds like
That
a
sounds.
whore.
Yeah, that's.
So,
Right.
Eberron.
All right.
I was wondering,
Dragon is
10%,
being
what's
outed as a
going on?
brony.
Is he?
Is this true, Dragon?
Inquiring minds. Want to
Okay.
know.
So, do they eat something, and if so, how much and what?
I would think they would just eat whatever they're drawn in at the time, like a McDonald's or whatever sponsor is sponsoring My Little Pony that week.
I'm not going to worry too much about it because it doesn't matter to the Eberron
I don't
campaign
know.
setting.
I think it will now. This is a we come up with this together, White Caliber.
Yeah.
And now I think we want to put ponies in there.
sure we can put Warforged ponies into the setting.
I'm okay with that,
You're
and
gonna-
we still won't be able to ride them for some reason.
So we're gonna find, and we'll find out partway through that the pony was in fact a changeling the whole time.
It's just
Black
Gurren from
mane.
the other campaign years ago.
Oh my god, it's black. Blacktail.
Oh, that's even better.
Call back.
All right, I'm going to get some tea because my mouth is very dry from speaking all that much, and then after that, we'll talk about Eberron. So.
Sounds good.
So how's everybody doing?
Oh, you know.
Well,
You
I was
want me
just
to
kind
put
of
in a
curled
break
up in
here?
my.
Is that what you want?
I'm all right today.
You can just put in our aimless chatter as a special feature for your YouTube.
They're prattling on.
All right, so I guess when we return, we're going to make some characters in the land of Eberron in the system of Strike.